High above the shattered skyline of Neo-Tokyo, the final rays of a broken sun slipped behind jagged towers of concrete and rusted steel, their edges carved against the smoky violet sky. In this desolate realm of shifting shadows, Kaela stood poised on a crumbling ledge, her keen senses scanning the wind-torn streets below. She was Faryan, an elite hunter shaped by the High Council's masterful science, each fiber of her being honed for a single purpose: to hunt. She had been tasked with the pursuit of countless fugitives, but never had she encountered a target like this one. Dax Renner, a rebel whose cunning and defiance had made him a living legend among the human survivors. A thin gust of radioactive dust swirled at her feet, reminding her of how precarious and ephemeral life had become. For weeks, Kaela had been closing in on him. She had followed him through labyrinthine underground passageways, forced him to retreat from one collapsed district to the next, and cornered him within the remnants of a once glorious skyscraper. Yet the tension that coiled in her gut was unfamiliar. Typically, her prey would run and hide, trembling in corners or scurrying through half-collapsed alleys. But Dax Renner, it seemed, was unlike any fugitive she had ever pursued. Rather than cowering, he had chosen to ascend. He climbed higher into the ruins, taunting her from the shattered windows and partial floors of the building's skeletal structure. Each time she came close, he vanished with a wry smile, as though the chase itself were some kind of elaborate dance. Kaela flexed her gloved hands, feeling the subtle hum of enhanced tendons tightening beneath her skin. The Faryan were humanity's next evolutionary step, genetically optimized for agility, strength, and keen intellect. Yet they carried a fatal flaw, an unspoken vulnerability that lurked in the folds of their engineered DNA. That secret was guarded by the High Council, known only to a chosen few. She had heard rumors, whispered in hallways or rumored in training pits, that something in their genetics was beginning to unravel. The Council, in its infinite wisdom, had done its best to hide the truth, but the cracks in the carefully built facade were beginning to show. Night fell swiftly, bringing a hush to the city's battered heart. Kaela inhaled the acrid air, steadying herself. Tonight, she would capture Dax Renner, deliver him to the Council, and confirm her worth once and for all. Her glimmering visor displayed the faint heat signature of a living body at the building's apex, for floors above her. With practiced ease, she leapt across a sagging beam, her boots striking a twisted hunk of rebar. Fractured glass crunched beneath her heels, and she steadied herself against the remains of a half-destroyed wall. Within minutes, she reached the top floor, an open expanse riddled with debris. The night sky revealed itself through jagged cuts in the ceiling, letting in spears of moonlight that danced across upturned desks and scattered documents. There, leaning against a fallen support column, stood Dax Renner. He did not flinch as she approached. Instead, he looked directly at her, a small smile playing at the corner of his lips. Wind stirred his dark hair, and the fading starlight illuminated the faint lines of his face, determination etched in every contour. "I wondered how long it would take," Dax said softly, his voice laced with both fatigue and confidence. "The High Council sends its deadliest hound, and here she stands." Kaela leveled her pulse rifle at him, though the usual flicker of triumph that accompanied such a moment was strangely absent. "You've run far enough," she answered, her tone clipped. "Time to surrender, or time to die. Death by your hand isn't part of my plan," he replied, stepping forward. "So I think we'll skip that option. As for surrender, I'm not one for that, either." A tense silence fell between them. Kayla's HUD pulsed with data, heartbeat analysis, oxygen levels, structural integrity readouts. All of it told her that Dax Renner was calm, unusually so for someone cornered and outmatched. "You have nowhere left to hide," she pressed, each syllable riding on her carefully measured breaths. "The Council wants you alive, but I doubt they'll care if you're brought and broken." Dax tilted his head, his voice taking on an edge of curiosity. "Then you should ask yourself why they want me alive. Have you ever wondered why you, Kaela of the Faryan, with all your lethal skill, have been tasked to hunt one man? Because I can tell you, it's not just about the rebellion. It's bigger than that." His words triggered a flutter in her stomach, a tremor of doubt she quickly suppressed. She stiffened, drawing on her training to push aside distractions. "What do you know of such things?" she asked, though the question sounded weaker than she intended. A great deal, Dax replied. He reached behind his belt and retrieved a small vial, an iridescent cylinder that glowed faintly under the moonlight. Because I carry the key to your future. A shot rang out, the crack of energy sizzling through the air. Kaela had fired. Her instincts, sharpened by countless missions, told her he might be armed, that the cylinder could be a weapon or a lethal device. Dax rolled to the side, diving behind a collapsed metal table. The beam of energy struck concrete, leaving a charred scar and a swirl of dust. With fluid grace, Kaela bounded forward, her boots skidding across the debris, the rifle charging for another shot. You do realize that wasn't exactly a friendly move? Dax quipped from behind cover, catching his breath. Maybe the council forgot to teach you how to talk with your targets before pulling the trigger? Kaela narrowed her eyes, ignoring his taunt. Show me the vial, she demanded, or I'll tear it from your fingers. Patience, he said, stepping out into the open with his empty hands raised. The cylinder was pinned carefully at his belt, still shining. I only meant to show you something that might stop you from making a mistake. A swirl of dust rose between them, settling into the light. Kaela could feel the slow throb of her heart, the quiet exhalations that marked her heightened awareness. She was about to speak, about to demand an explanation, when she noticed a faint clicking in her earpiece. A council override signal. Her helmet's internal systems flickered, and a cold, crackling voice broke through. Faryan Unit Kaela, the council commander intoned, the target is too valuable. Minimal harm authorized. Report your position. Her jaw tightened. She tapped her visor, switching off the voice feed. This was between her and Dax now. No remote commands would change that. She took a step closer, sizing him up. He was slimmer than she expected, his frame that of a man who had survived more through cunning than brute strength. And yet he carried himself like a warrior prepared to face whatever came next. Why does the council value you so? She demanded. Tell me, or you'll find that minimal harm can still be very painful. Dax's eyes did not waver. Your people, the Faryan, were designed to be the next step in human evolution. But they were built on a flawed foundation. That flaw has begun to manifest, perhaps you felt it, in ways you can't fully explain. Weakness, instability, a lingering sense that something's not right. She steadied her rifle, refusing to let him see her momentary slip of focus. We are the apex, she retorted, stronger, faster, smarter. Our destiny is to lead mankind, and it is you rebels who refuse to accept it. Dax nodded, as though he almost pitied her conviction. I once believed in old stories too. But the council needs something more than your zeal. They need my genetic code, blended with the Faryan line, to stabilize the errors hidden in your DNA. They need me alive, Kaela, but more than that, they need my child, or so they think. I am the final piece of their puzzle, the missing link that could save them from extinction. Her finger hovered on the trigger. The statement was absurd, or so she wanted to believe. Yet something in Dax's voice rang with truth, a chord of sincerity that resonated in the heart she had once believed belonged wholly to the council. You speak nonsense, she hissed, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her own uncertainties. Then bring me in, Dax challenged, stepping toward her. Hand me over to the council. Continue the cycle that has left the human world broken. See how long it takes before they turn on you. And when their artificial line begins to fail, when the next generation of Faryan are stillborn, where do you think they'll point the finger? At you? At me? At all of us? Kaela's mind raced. The council had always told her that humans were weak, misguided, an inferior species that could only survive under Faryan rule. But they had also told her that Faryan supremacy was inevitable, that no flaw could bring them down. Now, staring at the earnest defiance in Dax's eyes, she felt doubt creeping in like a slow, unstoppable tide. From outside the ruin came the low hum of gunship engines. The neon glare of council searchlights swept through the top floor, illuminating them both in harsh, white beams. We have to move, Dax said, his tone urgent. If they capture me here, you'll lose your chance to learn the truth. And if they kill me, the council's final hope dies with me. Torn between her training and the sudden swirl of new information, Kaela's grip on the rifle faltered. Council troops had arrived far quicker than she anticipated. Her heart pounded against her ribs. 1,000 carefully ingrained protocols screamed at her to hold her ground, to subdue the target and wait for reinforcements. Yet a smaller, more insistent voice whispered that something lay beyond the path she had always followed, something that might offer answers to the hollow emptiness in her soul. "Go," she muttered finally, locking eyes with Dax. "I'll hold them off." His relief was evident, a flash of gratitude passing across his face. Without further hesitation, he darted toward the twisted remains of a stairwell, vanishing down into the depths of the structure. In the distance, the whine of engine thrusters grew louder, the rhythmic pounding of rotor blades setting dust motes dancing in the beams of searchlights. Her earpiece crackled again, static-laced. "Farion Unit Kaela, your position is compromised. The fugitive must be apprehended at once." She glanced at the hole in the ground through which Dax had disappeared, then at the black silhouette of a council gunship hovering outside. Every instinct told her that running now would brand her a traitor. But for the first time in her life, she found herself questioning not just her duty, but the entire narrative of her existence. A clang of metal drew her attention. From the building's far side, several heavily armored Farion troopers emerged, each wearing the insignia of the High Council. Their rifles were trained on Kaela. One stepped forward, a tall female officer with piercing silver eyes, Captain Rhine, renowned for her ruthlessness. "Kaela," Rhine barked, "stand down. We have orders to secure the target. Where's Renner?" Kaela fought to maintain composure. She instinctively realized that revealing Dax's position now would sign his death warrant, but lying to a superior officer was a grave offense. "He fled below," Kaela replied. "The floors are unstable. I recommend caution." Rhine's gaze flicked over Kaela, suspicion darkening her face. "You let him escape? That's unlike you." Before Kaela could respond, the building shook as a gunship's spotlight tore across the concrete, unleashing a volley of disorienting pulses. In the confusion, Kaela pivoted, using her advanced speed to slip away from the group. She vaulted over a collapsed beam, ignoring the shouted commands behind her. The old Kaela would never have disobeyed, but the old Kaela no longer felt entirely real. Something new was stirring inside her, a burning need to see the world through her own eyes, free from the Council's iron grip. Her footsteps echoed through the deserted corridors of the building's upper floors, dust swirling in the pallid light. She slipped through an emergency stairwell door, descending 2 flights in rapid leaps. The entire structure groaned in the wind, and sections of crumbling concrete threatened to give way beneath her feet. Heart hammering, she caught a glimpse of movement ahead. Dax, picking his way through rubble in the half-dark. Their eyes locked, and he waved her forward with a tense nod. "Over here," he whispered, stepping aside to let her pass. "We need to find a safe route out." She wanted to question him further, to demand answers, but now was not the time. With council troopers swarming above and gunships circling the structure, escape was paramount. The building groaned again, a deep, resounding moan that shuddered through the cracked pillars and broken floors. "We're running out of time," she muttered. "This place won't hold much longer." Dax motioned down a corridor littered with twisted metal. "I found a breach in the wall that leads to a catwalk outside. If we can reach the adjacent tower, there's an old maglev track that might get us out of here." They made their way carefully along the hall, each step chosen to avoid collapsing panels or precarious shards of glass. As they moved, Kaela couldn't help but notice the quiet efficiency in Dax's actions. He was no ordinary renegade. Every movement suggested a lifetime of navigating danger, of surviving in places the Council had written off. He also had an air of empathy about him, an odd trait for a rebel leader the Council claimed was a cold-hearted terrorist. Soon, they arrived at a gaping hole in the concrete wall. The wind whipped through the breach, carrying the stale odor of the city's decay. Outside, the catwalk stretched across a yawning chasm to another dilapidated tower. The distance was only 30 feet, but the drop below was at least 100 stories. Pale moonlight bathed the narrow platform, revealing rusted struts and missing planks. "I'll go first," Dax said, bracing himself. He tested the catwalk's integrity, finding a beam that looked somewhat stable, then crossed slowly. The rusted metal groaned beneath his weight, but it held. He glanced back, waving for Kaela to follow. She took a breath, ignoring the swirl of anxiety in her gut. Faryan engineering had given her incredible reflexes and balance, yet the threat of a fatal fall was still all too real. Step by step, she inched across. When she was about halfway, a violent gust of wind rattled the catwalk. Far below, the darkness of the abandoned city streets beckoned. Kaela froze momentarily. Her usual calm was rattled by the swirl of thoughts cascading through her mind. Her oath to the council, the revelations Dax had shared, the possibility of betrayal. She forced herself onward until her boots finally touched the other side. They stepped into the adjacent tower, a structure marginally more intact. A silent hallway stretched before them, cluttered with old crates and remnants of an era that had once promised prosperity for all. Dax paused to examine a half-collapsed sign, which read, Neo-Tokyo Maglev East. Authorized personnel only. This way, he whispered, a note of urgency in his voice. If the power lines are still functioning, we might get the track operational for at least a short distance. They pressed forward, the air thick with dust. A few overhead lights flickered weakly, powered by emergency reserves that refused to die even decades after the city's downfall. Eventually, they reached a wide platform leading to a pair of heavy doors, behind which lay the old maglev track. I'll force it open, Kaela offered, stepping up to the rusted control panel. Her hands found the emergency lever, and with a grunt of exertion, she pulled. The door shuddered, metal grinding against metal, until it slid open just enough for them to slip through. Beyond the threshold stretched a dimly lit tunnel, wide enough for a single maglev train. The ceiling was lined with flickering strips of emergency lights, casting an eerie glow. Dax found a small control box near the entrance, fiddling with the switches and levers until the faint hum of an auxiliary power system vibrated through the air. Still online, he breathed in relief. Let's hope the track is stable. He guided Kaela to a small maintenance vehicle, a boxy, one-car transport designed for engineers to move along the track for repairs. Its lights sputtered to life as he flipped the activation switch. The motor purred softly, generating an anti-gravity field just powerful enough to lift the vehicle an inch or two above the rails. Kaela hopped in, scanning the darkness ahead. She half expected council drones or troopers to appear at any moment, but for the time being, they were alone. She felt her chest tighten at the thought of the massive betrayal she was committing, defecting from her mission, even if temporarily. A swirling mix of fear and exhilaration churned in her stomach. Dax climbed into the driver's seat, pressing the throttle forward. The maintenance vehicle glided along the maglev track, the wheels never touching the steel beneath. Slowly at first, and then with increasing momentum, they moved deeper into the bowels of Neo-Tokyo's forgotten transit system. We can talk now, he said quietly, glancing over at Kaela. Or at least, you can ask the questions I know must be eating at you. She met his gaze, forcing calm into her voice. You say your DNA can stabilize the Faryan lines. How could that be possible, when my people see your species as little more than relics? His expression turned reflective. Because the Faryan were built from what humanity used to be. The council used sophisticated gene editing, mixing traits from various bloodlines, to create a super soldier class. It worked for a generation, maybe two. But any house built on a shaky foundation will eventually crumble. And that's what's happening to your people. Kaela considered his words, remembering the hush that fell whenever the subject of births came up among her people. Despite the council's claims of expansion, she had seen fewer and fewer new cadets in training arenas. An unspoken tension had permeated the upper echelons of command. If what you're saying is true, she asked, why wouldn't the council simply force more humans to surrender their genes? Why chase you specifically? A sad smile tugged at his lips. They tried forcing it, in the early days, using unscrupulous labs. But every experiment ended in twisted failures, children born with disfigurements, or no mental capacity. Something about my lineage in particular is different, a piece in the puzzle that suits the Faryan code perfectly. It's not ego, I promise you. It's a curse in some ways. She studied him, searching for signs of deception. So why have you spent all these years running, instead of helping them fix it? Dax's eyes flashed with conviction. Because of what they did to my family. My parents discovered that this union between Faryan and certain human bloodlines could produce stable hybrids. They wanted to share this knowledge openly, to rebuild the world in a way that united us. The council discovered their research, labeled them traitors, and arranged for them to disappear. I only survived because I was smuggled out by sympathizers. From that day, I promised I would never let the Council exploit me or my DNA for their twisted ambitions. Kaela felt a pang of empathy. She had always viewed rebels as lawless brigands, but Dax's story rang of heartbreak and betrayal, a mirror, perhaps, of what the Council was capable of. She looked away, focusing on the dark tunnel outside. What happens now? He exhaled slowly. If you deliver me to the Council, they'll use me however they please, and once they have what they want, they'll either kill me or lock me away forever. They'll continue to rule by force, subjugating the dwindling human populace under their iron fist. But if I can reach the resistance, share the truth with my allies, perhaps we can finally expose the Council's lies, bring them down, and create a world where humans and Faryan can exist without the specter of extinction. Silence stretched between them for several moments, broken only by the gentle thrum of the maglev maintenance vehicle. Kaela pressed her lips together. She thought of her training, of the countless hunts, of the cold pride she had felt with every successful mission. Now, that pride felt hollow. The Council's voice still echoed in her memory, urging her to remain the loyal soldier. Yet, seeing Dax's resolve, she couldn't deny that her faith in the Council had been shaken to its core. Before she could reply, the vehicle lurched. The lights flickered as the tracks powered down momentarily. "We're hitting a dead zone," Dax muttered, coaxing the throttle gently. "Some sections of the grid are offline. We'll have to do this carefully." The vehicle continued, gliding through patches of darkness. Every so often, a flicker of weak emergency lighting offered a glimpse of corroded walls and maintenance alcoves. Soon, they reached a second platform. Dax cut the power, and the cart settled onto the track with a metallic thud. "Looks like we walk from here," he said, gesturing for Kaela to follow. They stepped onto the cracked concrete. A half-shuttered gate led to a corridor marked by faded signage. Sector 7, Subterranean Access. Kaela's visor automatically switched to low-light mode, illuminating the path ahead in a pale, ghostly glow. She noticed a faint draft and realized this sector might connect to the city's labyrinth of underground passageways. "I've heard rumors of entire rebel enclaves down here," she said warily. "Hidden cities beneath the rubble." Dax nodded, carefully peering into the gloom. "They're not just rumors. With the surface so hostile, a lot of people found refuge below. Some follow the Council out of fear, others resist." They descended a rusted staircase, each footstep echoing in the cavernous darkness. The air grew thick, laced with the scent of mold and stagnant water. The corridor angled downward, leading them deeper into the city's underbelly. Faded graffiti clung to the walls, testaments to the human will to communicate even amidst the apocalypse. After several minutes of quiet progress, they emerged into a vast chamber. The ceiling stretched far above them, supported by colossal pillars etched with chipped murals of old Neo-Tokyo life. Rusted catwalks and conduits snaked around the pillars, forming a labyrinth of metal. Below, in a wide basin, rested a stagnant reservoir of murky water. Tiny points of light flickered along the perimeter, signs of habitation, perhaps from rebel camps or hidden settlers. "This is the old water treatment facility," Dax explained, scanning the shadows for movement. "It's been offline for years, but some of the rebels use these chambers as a refuge. Stay alert. The Council sometimes sends patrols to clear them out." The hollow drip of water echoed in the darkness. A strange tension wrapped around Kaela's chest, an anticipation that anything could happen here. Instinctively, she grasped the hilt of her sidearm, though she left it holstered for the moment. They carefully followed a ledge that wound around the reservoir. Overhead, corroded pipes spat occasional droplets. The quiet hum of hidden generators reverberated through the walls, suggesting pockets of improvised infrastructure. As they turned a corner, the path opened onto a small settlement, a cluster of makeshift huts, their walls patched with scrap metal and remnants of tattered cloth. Almost immediately, figures emerged from the gloom, armed with scavenged rifles and wary expressions. Their eyes narrowed as they caught sight of Kaela's distinctive Faryan armor. Dax held up a hand, stepping forward to address them. "Calm down," he called softly. "We're here for safe passage. You know who I am." A muscular man with a scar across his cheek stepped forward, rifle pointed but not firing. He studied Dax, recognition dawning on his face. "Renner," he said in a low growl. "We thought you were dead." Dax allowed himself a slight smile. "Not yet, Arturo. We need your help. And I need a place to speak with my friend here, away from prying eyes." Arturo's gaze flicked to Kaela, laden with suspicion. "A Faryan? You've brought one of them into our midst." "Let him talk, Arturo," a calm voice cut in. From behind the huts stepped a middle-aged woman with braided hair, her face lined by years of hardship. She regarded Kaela evenly, though her eyes were filled with the wisdom of someone who had seen too many battles. If Dax trusts her enough to bring her, that might mean something. Dax nodded his thanks. "This is Captain Isla," he said to Kaela, "one of the leaders of the underground. She's no friend to the council, but she believes in protecting lives, even those who once stood against us." Kaela felt every pair of eyes upon her. For so long, she had been the relentless enforcer, the fearsome face behind a mirrored visor, carrying out the council's edicts. Now, she was the outsider, stepping into a place where her presence was met with raw hostility. She lowered her gaze, feeling for the first time a sense of shame at the uniform she wore. "You're safe for now," Isla said with a measured tone. "But you'll have to explain yourself, Faryan." "It's complicated," Kaela managed, the weight of her internal conflict pressing against her. "I need time to figure out if everything I've believed is a lie, or if there's some way to reconcile it all." Isla studied her, then motioned for them to follow. The group moved through the small settlement, lit by a series of dim overhead lamps rigged to solar batteries. People peered from the corners, their faces gaunt, their eyes filled with curiosity and fear. Kaela felt an odd pang at seeing them. These were the humans she was taught to regard as inferior, yet their endurance in such conditions sparked a certain respect within her. They reached a larger chamber partially sectioned off by repurposed metal panels. Inside was a makeshift war room of sorts, a round table covered in maps, flickering screens powered by salvaged computers, and a scattering of chairs. Isla sat at one side, gesturing for Dax and Kaela to take seats. Arturo stood guard at the entrance, rifle in hand. "Speak," Isla said, leaning forward. "Tell us why a Faryan walks into our domain without an army at her back." Dax began, recounting their escape from the ruined skyscraper, the arrival of council gunships, and the near collapse that forced them to flee together. He explained how Kaela had hesitated, even defied her orders to allow him a chance to speak. Isla listened in silence, her expression somber. When Dax finished, all eyes turned to Kaela. She cleared her throat, feeling suddenly aware of how foreign her voice must sound here. "I was born and bred in a Faryan facility," she began hesitantly. "Trained from infancy to serve the council, to believe humans were weak, that the only path forward was subjugation. I question nothing. Now, I see that the council has hidden truths from us. Our genetics are failing, yet they blame rebellious humans, those who won't fall into line. Dax claims that he is the key to curing our defect. If that's so, then why does the council treat him like a criminal, a threat to be eliminated?" Isla's lips pressed together. "Because the council thrives on power and fear, not hope or cooperation. If what Dax carries can save the Faryan, it could also upend their entire power structure. They won't let that happen peacefully." Silence lingered. Kaela stared at her gloved hands, the black alloy shining under the flickering lights. She felt the weight of so many hunts, so many conquests done in the council's name. "What if," she said, her voice cracking slightly, "what if I don't want to be a weapon anymore?" A gentle hush fell over the group, as though they recognized a fundamental shift in the dynamic. Before anyone could respond, the lights flickered, and a distant rumble reverberated through the subterranean space. Arturo turned sharply, pressing a headset to his ear. "We've got movement topside," he said grimly. "Council troopers must have tracked Dax here. They're coming down via the old subshafts." Isla stood, voice calm and decisive. "Then we have little time. Prepare the defenses. Hide the civilians. We can't hold them off indefinitely, but we might buy time for Dax and Kaela to escape." The settlement erupted into motion. People dashed between huts, gathering crates of supplies and weapons. Kaela rose, her pulse quickening. This was all too real, too sudden. For so long, she had been the looming threat. Now, she was on the other side of the lines, facing the unstoppable might of the High Council from the perspective of those she once hunted. She turned to Dax, who was already preparing to move. "Where do we go?" He exhaled. "We have a command post deeper in the tunnels. From there, we can link up with the main resistance cell in Neo-Tokyo. But we'll need Isla's help to distract the Council long enough for us to reach it." Kaela looked into his eyes, the swirl of conflicting emotions surging within her. "I'm with you," she said simply, though the weight of that statement was immense. She was making an enemy of her own people, casting aside the only life she'd ever known, all for a leap of faith. They exchanged a brief nod and hurried out of the chamber. Isla was already orchestrating a defensive line around the edges of the settlement. She gestured for Dax and Kaela to approach. "We'll slow them down here," she said, her voice steady. "Use the eastern corridor. It'll take you past the old pumping station. There's a small elevator shaft that should still function. It'll bring you closer to your command post." Dax squeezed her hand. "Thank you, Isla. We'll return the favor." Isla merely smiled, a hard gleam in her eyes. "Go." They sprinted along the perimeter, weaving through makeshift barricades and families hastily retreating to safer areas. Kaela caught glimpses of children clinging to parents, terror etched into their small faces. Guilt knifed through her as she realized how many such families she had helped uproot during raids, always believing she was doing what was necessary. Soon, they found the corridor Isla had mentioned, an old access tunnel that sloped downward. Metal grating clanged beneath their feet, and the hum of pumps grew louder as they descended. The air was damp, the walls slick. In the distance, the rumble of distant explosions echoed, marking the onset of the Council's assault. "Hurry," Dax urged, quickening his pace. "We have to reach that elevator before they block our route." They rounded a bend and came upon a large chamber filled with dormant machinery. Massive pipes ran overhead, dripping water into oily puddles on the floor. In the center, a squat elevator shaft stood behind a chain-link fence, the old cables still intact. Kaela moved to the control panel and hammered the activation switch. The elevator creaked, lights flickering. Then, with a wheezing groan, it began its ascent from somewhere deep below. Dax paced nervously. "They'll figure out where we went soon enough, if they haven't already." A sharp clang reverberated through the chamber, followed by the glare of flashlights. Council troopers had entered, their footfalls echoing through the metal labyrinth. Kaela's heart skipped. She recognized their movements, the purposeful, unified steps of trained Faryan soldiers. If they found them here, in this open chamber, they'd have a clear line of fire. She raised her pulse rifle, peering through the gloom. "We have to hold them off until the elevator arrives," she said. Dax crouched behind a large pipe, checking his sidearm. "I'm not the best shot," he admitted, "but I'll do what I can." A trio of Council troopers emerged from a side passage, their silhouettes outlined by the dull glow of overhead lamps. They spotted Kaela and Dax, leveling their weapons. Shouts rang out, followed by bursts of gunfire. Kaela dove behind a console, returning fire with disciplined bursts. 2 troopers went down, but a third continued advancing, calling for backup into his comms. Adrenaline surged in Kaela's veins, her training reflexively taking over. She rolled to the side, squeezed the trigger, another trooper crumpled. Dax fired from behind cover, forcing the others to duck back. The old Kaela might have relished the combat, but now she felt a pang of regret for killing her own. Still, she reminded herself, they were not offering her the luxury of peace. The elevator clanged to a stop, its doors creaking open. "Go," Kaela urged Dax, rising to lay down suppressive fire. The Council troopers hesitated momentarily, pinned by her lethal accuracy. "Kaela, let's move," Dax called. She pivoted, sprinting across the chamber, bullets and energy rounds whizzing past. They slipped through the elevator doors, and she slammed the lever to descend. As they dropped, the last image Kaela saw above the threshold was the twisted metal of the corridor riddled with gunfire, her old world colliding with her uncertain new path. The elevator descended into darkness, accompanied by rattling chains and the hiss of musty air. Kaela's heart thundered. She realized she was shaking, not from fear alone, but from the enormity of her actions. She had become the hunted. Dax placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We're almost safe," he said softly. "It's all right to be scared." She swallowed hard, meeting his gaze. I'm not scared, she said, though her quivering voice betrayed her. Or maybe I'm terrified. Terrified of what I'm leaving behind, and of what I might discover. A sympathetic sadness touched Dax's eyes. The truth isn't always easy, but it's better than living in a lie. The elevator slowed, finally lurching to a halt at the bottom. The doors opened onto a cavernous hallway, lit by a few flickering bulbs. They stepped out, and the elevator groaned shut behind them. Far above, the sounds of battle echoed faintly. Down here, the air was thick with the weight of abandoned industrial dreams. Almost there, Dax murmured, leading the way deeper into the corridor. Our command post is about a quarter-mile through these tunnels. Kaela followed, her pulse racing, her mind swimming with questions. She was a Farian, pride of the Council, an apex predator designed to hunt humans. Yet here she was, fleeing side by side with a rebel. For years, she had chased the man named Dax Renner, seeing him only as a mark. Now he was her guide, her strange ally in a world that no longer made sense. They traversed the winding tunnel, stepping over collapsed beams and tangled wires. Occasionally, Dax stopped to check a rusting junction box or read old signs etched into the walls. He seemed to know these passages intimately, a testament to how long he had been navigating the underbelly of Neo-Tokyo. Finally, they reached an unmarked metal door. Dax tapped a subtle rhythm on it, then leaned close, speaking in a hushed tone. A moment later, it slid open to reveal a bustling space beyond. Kaela followed him inside, blinking at the sudden glare of functioning overhead lights. The chamber was large, more modern, equipped with humming servers, communication arrays, and holographic displays. Men and women in patched uniforms bustled about, some armed, others typing at consoles. A large mural depicting a phoenix rising from ashes adorned one wall, scrawled in bright paint. Kaela could feel the weight of curious stares on her Farian armor, though no one immediately drew a weapon. An older woman approached, short, with white hair pulled back in a tight bun. She wore a crimson jacket bearing an emblem of interlinked gears. Dax Renner, she breathed, relief evident in her posture. We thought we'd lost you when the Council stormed the outer sectors. He clasped her hand warmly. I nearly was lost, Inara. But thanks to Kaela here, I made it out. The woman's keen gaze flicked to Kaela. So the rumors are true. A Farian stands with our cause. Interesting times, indeed. Kaela shifted uncomfortably. She could sense the suspicion, the curiosity, swirling in the air. I'm not sure what cause I stand with yet, she admitted softly, though her voice carried in the quiet space. But I know I can't go back, not while these doubts remain. Inara studied her for a moment before giving a slow nod. We'll have to earn your trust, and you'll have to earn ours. But if Dax vouches for you, that's good enough for a start. Dax led Kaela through the command post, showing her the makeshift ops center where stolen Council data was analyzed, communications with other rebel cells were coordinated, and strategic planning took place. Everywhere, Kaela saw a quiet determination, people united by a shared dream. It felt alien, yet strangely uplifting. The Council always depicted rebels as chaotic bandits, but here, she saw organization, empathy, and a fierce desire to survive and rebuild. Amid the subdued bustle, Dax guided Kaela to a smaller side room lined with shelves of medical supplies and old data drives. He closed the door behind them, exhaling heavily. We're safe for the moment. The Council rarely ventures this deep without a clear lead. Kaela leaned against the wall, pressing her forehead against cool metal. Her mind churned with conflicting emotions. How can I trust anything anymore? She asked, voice trembling. Everything I believed about Farian superiority is crumbling, yet I have no reason to believe that your side will treat me any differently if I become inconvenient. He approached slowly, resting a hand on the wall beside her. His expression was gentle. Trust is earned, not demanded. But know this, I want a world where neither species lives in fear or tyranny. The only way forward is together, human and Farian, sharing strengths, learning to accept differences. That's what my parents believed, and it's what I've been fighting for all my life. Her gaze dropped to his belt, where the small, iridescent vials still glowed. And that vial? You said it contains the key to our future. Dax unhooked it, rolling it in his palm. Genetic material spliced from my parents' research, combined with my own bloodline. With the right equipment, It can catalyze a stable hybrid. The Council was never able to replicate this because they lacked my mother's original code. She destroyed her lab so they couldn't abuse it. He hesitated, then handed the vial to Kaela. Take it. She accepted it warily, feeling its faint warmth through her gloves. Why give this to me? Because I trust you, he said simply. Even if I shouldn't. You're at a crossroads. If you decide to walk away or hand me over, you could do it. But I believe you won't. Kaela stared at the faint glimmer within the vial, heart pounding. Her entire existence had been shaped by genetic engineering, by the premise that she was part of a perfected race. Now she held a device that could redefine not just her future, but that of every living being in Neo-Tokyo and beyond. A wave of dizziness washed over her, and she sank onto a nearby crate. Everything is changing too fast, she murmured. I'm no longer sure where I belong. Dax crouched beside her. None of us are, Kaela. Belonging isn't written in our DNA, no matter how advanced or flawed it is. We find belonging with those who fight for a cause we believe in, who respect us for who we are. For a long moment, they sat in silence, the hum of the command post a distant murmur. Then Kaela pressed the vial back into Dax's hand. Keep it safe, she whispered. I'm not ready to carry that burden yet. He nodded, slipping it into a small protective case. We need to think carefully about our next move. The Council won't rest until they've captured us both. You especially, for the betrayal. She sighed. They'll label me a traitor, claim I've turned on our entire race. But if what you say is true, it's the Council that turned on us long ago. A faint beep sounded, interrupting their quiet exchange. Dax tapped his communicator, listening intently. A tense frown settled on his face. I see. Thank you, Inara. Keep me updated. He ended the call, turning to Kaela. The Council has deployed more units into the Undercity. They're blocking off routes, searching for us. We have to leave this command post soon. But before we do, Inara wants to show you something. Kaela stood, adjusting her armor. Lead the way. They left the side room, entering the main hub, where Inara waited beside a large holographic display. A swirl of city schematics floated above the console, layered with red markers indicating Council positions, and blue markers signifying known rebel outposts. Inara tapped the control pad, zooming in on a sector labeled High Council Citadel. The structure was massive, surrounded by smaller blue circles. We've been working with various cells, planning an assault on the Citadel for months, she explained. If we can strike at the heart of their power, reveal their lies, we might inspire a larger uprising among both humans and Faryan who are beginning to suspect the truth. With the demonstration of hybrid viability, we could force them to negotiate or step down. Kaela studied the display. She had been inside that citadel many times, its towering spires of reinforced steel, the labyrinth of corridors patrolled by elite Faryan troopers. The idea of storming it seemed almost impossible. Then again, she had just done the unthinkable by switching sides in the first place. Dax folded his arms. We'll need help from inside if we're going to succeed. Someone who knows the Citadel's defenses intimately. At that, all eyes turned to Kaela. She felt a chill. Indeed, she knew the Citadel's layout better than most. She had free reign there, had walked in the Council's upper halls. But to use that knowledge against her own people was an act of final betrayal. She took a slow breath, her mind racing with the potential consequences. I know every corridor, she admitted, and I know the guard rotations, security blind spots. But the Council will change protocols the moment they realize I'm compromised. Inara nodded, her expression resolute. That's why we have to move soon, before they can reconfigure the entire Citadel. If we wait too long, we lose the element of surprise. Dax placed a hand gently on Kaela's shoulder. We won't force you to lead us in, but without your guidance, the odds of success are slim. Kaela searched his eyes, sensing the weight behind his words. She glanced at Inara, saw the flicker of cautious hope, then looked around at the rebels, who had risked everything to fight for a future they believed in. In her heart, she felt that same longing, to be part of something just, to protect lives instead of crushing them. All right, she said quietly. I'll help. A ripple of relief passed through the group. Inara gave a determined nod, and people began moving swiftly, pulling up data on the Citadel, gathering weapons and supplies. Kaela stood at the edge of the bustling activity, mind still spinning. She had sealed her fate with that choice. There would be no going back now. As the rebels organized, Kaela felt a sudden pang in her abdomen. A subtle dizziness swept over her. She braced herself against a table, forcing a steadying breath. Dax noticed, stepping over with concern in his eyes. "You all right?" "I'm fine," she replied, though her voice shook slightly. "Probably just fatigue from everything that's happened." He pressed a palm to her forehead, checking her temperature instinctively. "You feel a bit warm." She brushed his hand away, uncomfortable with the sudden attention. "It's nothing. Let's focus on the mission." He nodded, though his eyes lingered on her with a hint of worry. For now, they had bigger concerns. The rebels needed her intel, and the plan to storm the citadel would demand every ounce of concentration. Over the next several hours, they worked in a fervor of preparation. Kaela outlined the structure of the citadel, highlighting key weaknesses. The rebels planned infiltration points and fallback routes, coordinating with other cells spread throughout the Undercity. Radio chatter indicated that council squads were sweeping the tunnels, but Inara's people managed to stay a step ahead, using decoys and sabotage to mislead the pursuers. Amid this whirlwind, Kaela felt her stamina waning. The slight pang in her abdomen grew more persistent, and a feverish heat flushed her cheeks. She tried to ignore it, attributing it to stress. But a creeping suspicion gnawed at her mind. Faryan biology was advanced, but it was not immune to sickness. Rare as it was, she had heard stories of Faryan soldiers collapsing without explanation. Could it be some manifestation of the genetic flaw she'd heard about? She pushed the thought aside. Focus, she told herself. Focus on the mission. Eventually, they formed a plan, a direct, coordinated strike on the citadel, timed to coincide with a large council ceremony in 2 days. Most of the High Council would be present, providing a unique window to reveal the existence of a stable hybrid possibility and the corrupt measures the council had taken to hide it. If the rebels could show the council's own troops that their leaders were lying, some of them might refuse orders or even defect. The plan was bold, and the risk of failure immense, but it was the best chance at changing the fate of both species. As the final details were locked in, Inara approached Kaela and Dax. "You'll be leading the infiltration team," she stated, with Kaela's knowledge of the Citadel's layout. "Are you ready?" Kaela, despite her swirling fatigue, stood tall, meeting Inara's gaze. "Yes," she said, "we're ready." Inara nodded. "Get some rest. We launched the mission at dawn. Our scouts say the council is fortifying the upper levels, but we've got a surprise for them. Do your part, and we might just succeed." They retreated to a small makeshift barracks area, where cots were lined up in a quiet corner. Kaela removed parts of her armor, setting them aside, then sank onto a cot. Her body trembled, the heat in her core intensifying. Dax noticed, kneeling beside her with concern. "Kaela, you're shaking." She squeezed her eyes shut. "I just need rest. I'll be fine by morning." He frowned, placing a gentle hand on her wrist to check her pulse. His brow furrowed. "Your heart rate's irregular. Maybe we should get a medic?" "No," she breathed, tears pricking the corners of her eyes. "Please, I don't want anyone prodding me right now. Let me sleep." He nodded reluctantly, drawing a thin blanket over her shoulders. "All right, but if you get worse, we won't have a choice." She drifted into a restless slumber. In her dreams, she saw fragments of her life: training halls, council ceremonies, hunts across the ruins. She saw the twisted faces of families torn apart by her missions, the vacant eyes of those she had subdued. Then, she saw Dax, holding a vial that glowed like a star, beckoning her toward an uncertain horizon. A sense of foreboding wrapped around her, threads of possibility tying her fate to the child that might be born of these two worlds. She awoke with a start, early light from the overhead lamps signaling it was time to move. Her body felt sore, but the fever had broken. She touched a hand to her abdomen, the ache fading into a subtle presence she couldn't quite name. Rising gingerly, she slipped her armor back on. Dax was up too, busy reviewing final instructions with Inara. He shot her a worried glance, but she gave him a reassuring nod. She was determined to see this through. At dawn, the team gathered, a mix of seasoned rebels, tech specialists, and a few ex-Faryan soldiers who had deserted the council. Kaela recognized them from her training days, though she had never suspected they might defect. They offered cautious nods, acknowledging an unspoken kinship as they prepared to strike the very seat of power they once served. The plan was set. Approach the Citadel via the remains of an old subway line that led into the underlevels, bypass primary security checkpoints, plant EMP charges to disable the advanced security systems, force an entry into the main tower, reveal the truth about the Council's deception and the existence of a stable human-Ferion hybrid possibility. If only they could broadcast the data from inside the Citadel's command center. Meanwhile, outside, other rebel groups would create diversions, drawing the Council's forces away. Kaela stood at the head of this infiltration force, pulse rifle in hand. Dax was beside her, the weight of his precious genetic data tucked safely in a sealed container at his waist. They exchanged a final glance of resolve. "All right," Inara said quietly. "Go, and may fortune favor you." With that, they slipped into the tunnels, the gloom swallowing them as they advanced toward the Citadel's domain. Heart pounding, Kaela led the way, her mind attuned to every nuance of the path ahead. At intervals, they bypassed security drones using codes she recalled, or quickly dispatched them before alarms could sound. The rebels trailed behind her in a tense hush, their faith in her knowledge tested at every turn. After miles of twisting corridors, they reached a fortified barrier, a large metal gate that sealed off the Citadel's lower section from the old subway. Kaela approached the control console, quickly entering override commands. The lights blinked red, access denied. She cursed under her breath. Security protocols had been updated. "Stand back," a rebel demolitions expert murmured, stepping up with a specialized charge. Kaela nodded, and within minutes, the barrier lay in molten ruins. The infiltration team rushed through, pressing deeper into the Citadel's labyrinth. Sporadic skirmishes erupted as they moved upward. Council troopers, stationed in small squads, engaged them. Kaela felt a pang each time she returned fire. These were once her brethren. But the shock of betrayal on their faces spurred her on, reminding her this was no time for hesitation. A single moment's doubt could cost them the mission. The deeper they went, the more Kaela felt her world tilt. Corridors she had known by heart were now lined with new automated turrets, fresh security measures that hadn't existed when she left. She guided the team around what they could, neutralizing what they couldn't. The tension mounted as they approached the central elevator shaft that led to the Council's main hall. "There," Kaela said, pointing to the wide elevator doors. "That's our express route to the top, but we'll need the master keycard." Dax glanced around. "Any idea where we might get one?" She thought for a moment, recalling the organizational structure. "Lieutenant Eris," she said. "He's stationed in the sub-level offices. He should have clearance." They pressed on, locating Eris's command post, a small control room bristling with monitors. Inside, Eris stood, flanked by a pair of council troopers. A brief but fierce firefight ensued, the rebels moving in tandem, controlling angles. Kaela vaulted over a console, disarming Eris with a fluid kick. She pinned him to the ground, pressing her forearm to his throat. "Keycard," she demanded. Eris spat a curse, but she pressed harder until he grunted in submission. Shakily, he reached into a pouch and produced a thin, metal keycard. Kaela snatched it. "Sorry," she muttered, rising. She signaled for the team to move out. They left Eris and his men subdued, unconscious on the floor. She grimaced. This felt too much like a betrayal. But time was short, and regrets could wait until the world was set right. They hurried back to the elevator, slotted the keycard into the reader, and felt the platform hum to life. With a deep mechanical groan, the elevator began ascending, carrying them up through layers of steel and secrecy. As they rose, Dax exchanged uncertain looks with Kaela. They were past the point of no return. Finally, the elevator slowed, the doors sliding open to reveal the grand foyer of the Council's upper hall. Polished floors, towering pillars, and walls lined with austere banners depicting the Ferion crest. Council troopers, alerted by the intruder alarms, stood at the ready, forming a blockade across the marble floor. At the far side, a sweeping staircase led to the main assembly chamber, where the Council presumably gathered. A hush fell over the infiltration team. Kaela tightened her grip on the rifle. "There's no turning back now," she breathed. Her words were met with grim determination in the eyes of the rebels. One of the troopers shouted, "Weapons down. Hands where we can see them." No one complied. Instead, Kaela fired the opening salvo, a precise energy blast that forced the troopers to scatter. The foyer erupted into chaos, gunfire echoing off marble columns. The infiltration team advanced methodically, using pillars for cover. Council troopers dropped, but more surged in, their training evident. Kaela found herself locked in a lethal dance, the swirl of muzzle flashes and the acrid tang of ionized air filling her senses. Amid the chaos, Dax motioned toward the staircase. Go. We have to reach the council chamber and broadcast the data. Kaela nodded. She signaled a small squad of rebels to lay down covering fire. Together with Dax, she sprinted across the open floor, bullets and energy beams streaking past. Her enhanced reflexes guided her, ensuring each stride found secure footing. They reached the base of the stairs, ducking behind the ornate railing as troopers converged on them. Up there, Kaela gasped, pointing to a side hallway that led to the council's private antechamber. We can bypass the main entrance if we break through the corridor. Dax and Kaela dashed up the steps, momentarily out of range of the troopers below. The infiltration team continued to engage, ensuring the council's forces remained occupied. Reaching the top, Kaela aimed a small breaching charge at the corridor door, blasting it open. Smoke billowed, revealing a hushed, stately corridor lined with grand portraits of Faryan leaders. Each pair of carved doors opened onto private offices, but at the far end stood the ornate double doors of the council's main chamber. Kaela and Dax raced down the hall, footfalls echoing across the polished tiles. They could hear the muffled commotion from within. The council had to be aware of the infiltration by now. Kaela's heart thudded. She recalled standing guard outside those doors not long ago, a loyal soldier in service to the very people she now intended to overthrow. They burst into the chamber. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating a grand semicircular dais where the high council members stood. Immediately, a hush fell. All eyes turned to Kaela, the renegade hunter, and Dax Renner, the rebel fugitive. A guard near the dais leveled his rifle, but the council leader, an imposing figure named High Counselor Taris, lifted a hand. Hold, Taris commanded, voice resonating through the vaulted space. He fixed Kaela with a cold stare. What is the meaning of this treachery, Kaela? She lifted her visor, exposing her face, an act of defiance that crackled with finality. I know the truth, Taris, she replied, her voice echoing in the chamber. I know about the failing genetics, the hidden need for human DNA. And I know about Dax Renner's unique code that could save us all. Why hide it from our people? A ripple of shocked whispers spread among the lesser council members, but Taris only hardened his gaze. We do what must be done to ensure order. You have betrayed your kind by consorting with vermin, and your punishment shall be swift. Dax stepped forward, raising the sealed container. Before you pronounce your sentence, know that the rest of the Citadel can hear us, he said, glancing meaningfully at a row of consoles lining the wall. Indeed, the infiltration team had succeeded in tapping into the building's broadcast network. Dax hit a control switch on his belt, and a pulsing light indicated that the entire conversation was being transmitted. This device, he continued, contains proof of a stable genetic lineage between human and Faryan. It means no more forced subjugation, no more fear of extinction. We can rebuild together, if the council stops its oppressive tactics. Tari sneered. You think a piece of technology will sway the faithful? We are the apex. We hold dominion by right. Kaela lifted her rifle, not to fire, but to underscore her words. Listen to your own troops, Taris. The Faryan are not blind. Many have seen the cracks, the tragedies you've covered up. This ends now. At that moment, the chamber doors behind them burst open, and a squad of council troopers rushed in. Kaela braced herself for another firefight. But instead of firing on her, they hesitated, uncertain. They'd been hearing the broadcast, seeing their revered high council threatened by one of their own. Confusion was evident in their eyes. One trooper, a lieutenant Kaela recognized from training, lowered his weapon. Is it true, Counselor Taris? Our children, they've been dying. My own sister lost 2 newborns. You always told us it was just an unfortunate coincidence. Taris's face contorted with fury. Silence. You dare question me? The troopers exchanged uneasy glances. Doubt was seizing them, swirling through the chamber with unstoppable force. The infiltration team's gambit was working. Public exposure of the Council's deception was prying open the cracks in Faryan loyalty. The Council members stood rigid, powerless to stop the viral spread of truth in real time. Sensing the shift, Tari snarled, snatching a sidearm from his belt. In a single fluid motion, he fired at Kaela. She dodged, reflexes saving her, but the blast grazed her arm, sending a searing jolt of pain. Several troopers rushed forward, disarming Tari's before he could fire again. Chaos exploded in the chamber as Council members shouted, some attempting to flee, others grabbing weapons to defend themselves. Dax sprinted to the nearest console, connecting his device, broadcasting the genetic code for all to see. Screens across the Citadel lit up with data. Charts, sequences, proof that the Faryan line could merge with the right human genetics to ensure survival. Gasps and murmurs spread like wildfire. Outside the chamber windows, the flash of gunfire from the ongoing battle slowed. Commanders, seeing the feed on their HUDs, began calling for ceasefires, uncertain how to proceed. Even the Council's staunchest loyalists couldn't ignore hard evidence that contradicted years of propaganda. High Counselor Taris, pinned by troopers he once commanded, spat in rage. You've doomed us all with your heresy. Kaela clutched her wounded arm, facing him with a cold resolve. No, Taris. You doomed us the moment you chose tyranny over truth. A hush settled. The infiltration team and the troopers stared at one another, neither side raising weapons now. The broadcast had done its work. The illusions propping up the Council's absolute power were crumbling. One by one, the Council members were placed under guard, their fate uncertain, but their rule effectively ended. Dax rushed to Kaela's side, relief evident. You're hurt. She grimaced, pressing a hand to the burn. I'll live. A swirl of emotions flooded her. The weight of betrayal, the thrill of liberation, the uncertainty of a future that lay before them. She met Dax's gaze. Now what? He gently took her hand, helping support her. Now we build. Human and Faryan alike. It won't be easy. The city's in ruins, trust is fragile. But we have a chance to make something better. In the days that followed, a fragile peace settled over Neo-Tokyo. Council loyalists relinquished their arms in the face of mounting evidence and popular outcry. Many Faryan soldiers, including Kaela's former comrades, came forward, apologizing for blindly enforcing oppressive rule. The newly formed Provisional Council, led by both humans and reformed Faryan leaders, set about the Herculean task of restoring infrastructure, distributing resources, and drafting new laws founded on cooperation rather than fear. During this time, Kaela and Dax worked tirelessly to share the hybrid research, ensuring medical facilities could harness the knowledge to stabilize the Faryan genetic line. The old High Council's shadows lingered, but a sense of hope blossomed among the populace. Hope that both species might unite to rebuild what was broken. Amid these changes, Kaela could no longer deny the subtle shift within her body. She sought out a medic, who confirmed what she had begun to suspect. She was pregnant, the child a product of two worlds. Shock and fear mingled with a strange sense of awe. The first true human-Faryan hybrid conceived naturally, a living testament to the possibility of bridging their divides. When she told Dax, he was silent at first, emotion welling in his eyes. Then he held her gently. We'll protect this child, he whispered, no matter what. She'll be a symbol of hope. News of Kaela's pregnancy spread quickly, sparking celebration and a few murmurs of trepidation. Some believed the child would herald a new era of unity. Others feared the unknown. Yet Kaela found solace in the knowledge that the child was hers, not a product of forced council laboratories, but of a bond forged in shared struggle and truth. For the first time, she felt truly alive, no longer a weapon in someone else's hands, but a mother, forging her own destiny. As the city found its footing, pockets of resistance to the new order remained. Remnants of the old council occasionally caused unrest, unwilling to yield their vision of absolute Faryan supremacy. But each day, more came to accept the new reality. Human enclaves emerged from hiding, forging alliances with Faryan communities seeking to stabilize their numbers. Months passed, and the sound of construction resonated through Neo-Tokyo's streets. Cranes repairing towers, people clearing rubble to plant gardens, families beginning to dream of a future without constant fear. Kaela and Dax organized teams to bring food and medical supplies to once-forgotten districts, bridging the gap between species. Then, one evening, as the sun dipped behind rebuilt spires and cast golden light across the city, Kaela felt the pangs of labor. Dax rushed her to a newly established clinic, where doctors, both human and Faryan, stood ready, a rare unity of expertise. The labor was hard, her body torn between the natural and the engineered, but she endured. By nightfall, she held a small, crying infant in her arms, a tiny girl with bright eyes and a tuft of soft hair. Tears of relief and joy streamed down Kaela's face as she cradled her daughter. Dax stood beside her, all plain on his features. Around them, the staff looked on with cautious optimism, recognizing the miracle of life that transcended so many barriers. The child was proof that everything they had fought for could take root in reality. Days later, Kaela took the infant into the center of the citadel, now repurposed as a public forum, where a statue had been erected in memory of those who had fallen, human and Faryan alike, under the old regime. Dax joined her, gently placing a small wreath of flowers at the statue's base. Their baby cooed in Kaela's arms, oblivious to the meaning of the monument, but safe in the warmth of her parents' love. A crowd gathered, and murmurs rose as they saw the baby for the first time. Some bowed in respect, others cheered softly. In the hush that followed, Kaela looked around at the once formidable halls of power, now open to all. She remembered the hunts, the betrayals, the desperate flight through ruined skyscrapers, and the final confrontation that had shifted the course of history. This child, she said in a steady voice, addressing the gathered crowd, represents a new future, a shared path where we embrace both our strengths and our vulnerabilities. We stand on the threshold of unity. Let us move forward, not as hunters and prey, but as allies in rebuilding a world that honors life in all its forms. Applause rippled, and Kaela felt a wave of relief mingled with hope. She gazed at Dax, who reached out to gently stroke their daughter's hair. In that moment, she thought of how their journey had begun. She, the hunter, had once pursued him as prey. Yet in the end, he had captured her heart, and together they had exposed the truths that set two species on the path to reconciliation. Neo-Tokyo still bore the scars of its dark past, its skyline jagged with battered skyscrapers, its streets haunted by memories of war. But in those scars, new life was taking root. No longer overshadowed by the council's tyranny, people, human and Faryan alike, were forging bonds that transcended the old divides. Trust would take time, mistakes would be made, but the seeds of possibility had been planted. Holding her newborn against her chest, Kaela closed her eyes. She whispered a silent vow to protect this fragile peace, to guide her child into a world shaped by cooperation, not conquest. Dax wrapped an arm around her shoulder, and they stood together in the heart of the citadel, a testament to what could be achieved when old lies crumbled to reveal new truths. At length, they turned away from the statue, stepping out into the bright light of a morning sky that glinted over rebuilt towers and busy streets. Their footsteps echoed through the open archway, signifying not just an end, but a beginning, a story that would continue through the next generation, nurtured by hope and tempered by the lessons of the past. Thus, in the ruins of Neo-Tokyo reborn, the hunter found redemption, the rebel found peace, and both species found a chance to evolve, united in the precious gift of life. The future, once stained by fear, now glowed with the promise of a shared destiny. And so they walked on, hearts filled with a quiet joy, confident at last that after so many years of hunting and being hunted, they had discovered the enduring truth. Only together could they claim the horizon of tomorrow, forging a bond more powerful than any that had come before.